A very good afternoon, namaskar to everybody present here. We welcome you to our third session of day 3, Tech for Seva, Synthesis of Modern Science in the Field of Ayurveda. The best rule for development is to upkeep the link between man and the nature. And I now invite Dr. Karuna for a formal welcome.
Good afternoon, namaskar to one and all. It's my great pleasure to welcome our worthy guests and audience to the third session of third day of Tech for Seva, the second virtual international summit, a joint initiative by Vigyan Bharati, Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, and Center for Innovation and Biodesign, PGI Chandigarh. We are fortunate to have Shri Jian Sahasrabuddhe ji, our worthy guest of honor, Shri Vaidya Rajesh Kuteja ji, Padma Shri, our worthy chief guest, Dr. Yogendra Malik ji, our presiding guest, Dr. Rama Jayasundar, Dr. Ajeta Channa, Dr. Geeta Krishnan, our panelists, Dr. Deepika Jain, Professor Baldev Setia, our CBOID Award winners. Now, over to Dr. Shefali.
Thank you, Dr. Karuna. It is a great pleasure and an honor to introduce our worthy chief guest, Shri Vaidya Rajesh Kotecha, Secretary Ministry of Ayush. Rajesh Kotecha is an Indian Ayurveda physician. He received a Padma Shri Award for Medicine in 2015. He is the former Vice Chancellor of Gujarat Ayurveda University, Jamnagar. Vaidya Rajesh Kotecha is the author of 2 books, Concept of a Tattva Bhinivesha in Ayurveda, which discusses minor psychiatric disorders within Ayurveda parameters, and A Beginner's Guide to Ayurveda, which is about Ayurveda principles and day-to-day life practices to remain healthy. He received Global Ayurveda Physician Award in 2007 and Ayurveda Ratna Award in 2008. We welcome you, sir, and it would be a great pleasure to hear from our worthy chief guest. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, we would like to hear a few motivational words from your side, sir.
Namaskar. The chairman of this session, Dr. Yogendra ji, the panelists, Dr. Rama Jayasundar ji, Geeta Krishnan ji, Honorable Sri Jain Sahasrabuddhe ji, all leadership of CBIOD, and dear participants. For me, this is a privilege to be invited at this event, and with this specific panel discussion on synthesis of modern science in the field of Ayurveda. I'm very happy that Tech for Seva, an initiative, is organizing this, and then I went through the details, and I'm very happy to note and to observe that the topic chosen, the participants, the experts, all are thoughtfully done. All thought leadership are invited. So the outcome would be very much interesting. I request the organizers that when you compile the outcome, please send me a copy. I will be interested to do all those outcomes, and then it will be enriching for me as a student of the life. I try to be student and then try to learn from every single thing, and this could be a good learning opportunity for me. We all know that this event is organized by Vigyan Bharati, UBN, Center for Innovation and Biodesign, and it is a global event, and it is really great to see the multi-stakeholders, including the academicians, scientists, entrepreneurs, startups, and organizations on a single platform to impart knowledge and technical skills to individuals engaged in different sectors of innovation to address the concerns, issues, and challenges of people. Hopefully, this 4-day summit, for which today is the 3rd day, will enrich us with deep insights on various domains of innovation and technology. The Global Summit focuses on augmenting national capacity with application of health technologies and innovations to improve efficiency of healthcare delivery system and it is very relevant in the present scenario. Ayurveda has strong roots in traditional science and research. It involves a number of clinical practices and techniques, and these therapies have been the result of clinical application and research for thousands of years. It is uh, it is believed until recently that Ayurveda is a traditional knowledge system, and then it is our tradition, it is a practice. But now that after so much of clinical and other researches, now it is evident that Ayurveda is not only as a traditional knowledge system, or it is a practice, traditional practice, but it is also a science, and it's a science, it's a practice based on science. So, and this is a time-tested science, and concepts of mind, body, soul, human and nature, harmony between external and internal environment is central to Ayurveda, which also, this the theme of synthesis of modern science in the field of Ayurveda. Yeah, we also, the organizers have put this caption also: the best tool for development is to upkeep the link between man and the nature. Ayurveda also, as a basic founding principles of Ayurveda, it also tells the same thing. It mentions about Loka Purusha Samya Siddhanta or Pancha Mahabhuta. All these leads to this, connection between man and nature. I would like to cite this wonderful sutra. This sutra is defining Ayurveda actually. Uh, it says, Hita hitam sukham dukham ayustasya hita hitam manam cha tatcha yatroktam ayurveda sa uchyate. So, the meaning of this sutra is that we, as a matter of fact, to stay healthy, we have to follow Hitayu and Sukhayu, and we have to make sure that we do not indulge into Ahitayu and Dukhayu. So, these all four batteries, parameters are thoroughly defined in the commentaries of Ayurveda Shastra. Like, for example, Sukhayu and Dukhayu are defined as Sukha Sangyakam Arogyam and Vikaro Dukham Evacha. It means that the Arogya in its entire perspective, the total health is the Sukha, is the happiness. And disease, any kind of disease condition or imbalanced condition is considered as Dukham or unhappiness. But when you look at this Hitayu and Ahitayu, you can see that Sukhayu and Dukhayu is in its perspective is a complete definition about completely cover health and wellness and diseases. But this Hitayu and Ahitayu, is something more holistic. And in the definition of Hitayu, it says socially and environmentally responsible way of life. So it talks about responsibility, our responsibility to the community, to the family, and to the mother nature. And Ahitayu is irresponsible behavior towards the family, towards the community, towards the nation, and towards the mother nature. So this is so beautiful. And when this definition of Ayurveda, it also gives us a lot of insight how we need to balance between man and nature. Without this balance, no total health is possible, according to this description. I would like to cite some examples. It is just a thought-provoking examples, nothing else. But it is interesting to know that when you look at this expectancy of a person getting cancer during the lifetime is a specific marker about incidence of cancer, and it is about 49% in men and 38% in women in North America. In the Western Europe, developed part of Europe, it is something about 38-39% in men and 26-27% in women. It means that 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women gets cancer in North America, and 1 in 4 women and 1 in 3 men gets cancer in Western Europe, and we know that these countries are having best medical facilities as compared to rest of the world. The question is why these people gets more cancer. There are some counter argument that you people are also not healthy. You get lot of diabetes. You get lot of hypertension. India is a hub of diabetes, etc. But looking at this perspective, that why in this developed world having lot of good facility, incidence of cancer is so much as against 2 to 7% in sub-Saharan African countries and Southeast Asian countries, including India, except Japan and China. So this is a question, and when we look at the perspective of this definition, hitayu, sukhayu, ahitayu, dukhayu, wherever there is excess exploitation of the natural resources, there are more problems, irrespective of having medical facility or not. And there are arguments and counter arguments. Counter argument could be that in these countries, the developing countries or African countries where there is health system is not so robust, there is a lack of documentation of real patients, or these countries have good documentation, so they have more numbers. These are the arguments. But you apply all the types of batteries of statistics, still it is unexplained, and it is difficult to explain how it is 7 times more in these countries than the poor and developing countries. So the inference could be that it could be related with too much of exploitation of the self, too much of stressful conditions, too much of playing with the mother nature in the terms of environment, pollution, or stress because of the loneliness, because of this lack of emotional support, and so on. So I'm just putting this thought. I'm not putting any conclusion, but this is a real good thing to look at, that particular statistics and its relationship with man and nature balance, and how to upkeep the link between these two balances. Also, when we look at this, Sanskrit verse, Yat Pinde Tat Brahmande, it also relates us with the Pancha Mahabhuta, that whatever is in our body, it is in the nature. So we have this dynamic relationship, is a continuous relationship to keep harmony, and that is very well understood in Ayurveda. And we Ayurvedic physicians, when we treat the patients, we look at this possibility how to keep this balancing, and this is something really a new paradigm, when we talk about personalized medicine. Further, it states that yavantahi loke bhava visheshaha tavantah purushe. Yavantah purushe tavantah loke means that the human body is an epitome of the universe, and it is an integral part of the nature, and the best healthcare advocacies of good health is indeed getting back to the nature. So this is all references from the different classics of Ayurvedic Sahitas. The concept of perfect health in Ayurveda could be understood through a modern understanding of quantum theory. I'm sure that Ramaji Jaisundar, she is expert of physics, so she may be able to explain this more. It is possible to achieve and maintain a state of perfect health by gaining insight into the nature of reality commonly associated with enlightenment. Health is the result of a balanced network of interactions and interrelations within living beings and their environment. The world is witnessing a paradigm shift in health-seeking behavior from treatment to wellness, and preventive personalized medicine will be the future of healthcare. Ayurveda can be the best solution to cater these changing healthcare needs globally. I would like to cite some, wonderful example about IGIB CSIR, what they have done under this Three Sutra program. We know that Ayurveda Biology program, it was initiative envisioned by Dr. M.S. Valyathan, and it has shown promising results in this regard with a number of publications. And in Trisutra at IGIB, also they have found some wonderful proof of concepts about how to, put these Ayurvedic principles of Prakriti in practice to create an ecosystem of personalized medicine. Genomics research at CSIR IGIB has not only provided modern scientific explanation to the unifying concept of Trisutra Ayurveda, but also has led to the development of an important bridge between modern science, medicine, and Ayurveda. Minister of Ayush always tries to harness the potential of new technologies in all our activities. There is a great scope of research and technological innovations in Ayurveda and other traditional systems of medicine on scientific parameters to evaluate the legitimate role of Ayurveda in primary healthcare and effective global healthcare delivery system. Affordable healthcare for all is a major concern in India. Implementation of IT in healthcare is being accelerated to provide effective and better care for citizens of our country. Ministry of Ayush also has taken initiative to get on board in healthcare information technology implementation projects. In this regard, we have created Ayush Grid, an ecosystem to create IT backbone for everything related to Ayush. And it is an integration of IT projects exclusively meant for improvement and facilitation of Ayush pan-India. The initiative is poised to emerge as a game changer, as it is the first of its kind citizen-centric service from Government of India to provide electronic health record. It is also in aligned with Atal Digital Health Mission, and we are also having this sandbox mechanism where API of our developed technologies will be on open source and will be put in sandbox, so it will be available for all entrepreneurs to develop further. So that is something very unique. AHMIS, Ayush-based Health Management Information System, is a comprehensive IT platform to effectively manage all functions of healthcare delivery and patient care in Ayush facilities. The Namaste portal, I would request you to look at this Namaste portal on Google, is developed by Ministry of Ayush, provides information about standardized terminologies and morbidity codes along with dedicated data entry module for updating morbidity statistics in consolidated form as well as on real-time basis. The launch of this portal is a landmark in the history of Ayush with the promise to bring in equity with the mainstream healthcare system. It also, we said that we will, by using this portal, we'll get Ayush morbidity codes into ICD-11 traditional medicine chapter of WHO. Already we are working on that. Dr. Geeta Krishnan, who is in secondment and WHO is a technical officer at WHO, he has taken up this task, and we are very happy, and I would like to endorse his contribution. In current pandemic of COVID-19, India has taken various initiatives in combating of COVID-19 through Ayurveda, Yoga, and other traditional medicine sciences, and has showed the path to combat with COVID by improving general immunity through Ayurveda. I'm talking about host defense mechanism immunity. During the pandemic, Ayush products as well as services have become more popular globally, resulting in multifold rise in their demand and commerce. Government of India has also released National Clinical Management Protocol based on Ayurveda and Yoga for management of COVID-19, which includes post-COVID management as suggested use of Ayurvedic formulations like Chyawanprash and Ashwagandha, etc., based on clinical evidences. So these formulations or some other formulations were also distributed on a large scale across the country to the prophylaxis against COVID-19. Like to mention the numbers, total 127 research projects on COVID have been undertaken at more than 150 locations. We had constituted a task force, interdisciplinary task force, and I am happy to note that two panelists, Dr. Rama Jayasundarji and Dr. Geeta Krishnan, were also part of that task force. And with the help of task force, because they did help us to standardize the protocols, get the protocols reviewed, design different protocols, design different studies. So studies are ranging from randomized control trials to standalone or to with control with add-on therapy, or preclinical studies or docking studies or even impact assessment study. So there are a lot of different designs, prophylactic studies, observational studies, with the participation of around 500,000 candidates for different types of research. So one of the example I want to cite is about Ayush Sanjeevani, jointly developed by Ministry of Ayush and by team, and has documented the impact assessment of the effectiveness, acceptance, and usage of Ayush advisories and measures in the prevention of COVID-19 through mobile application-based population-based study in around 1.35 crore people. Out of these respondents, 85%, 85.1% of the respondents reported use of Ayush measures for prophylaxis of COVID-19, among which 89.8% respondents agreed to have benefited from the practice of Ayush advisory. India launched a nationwide campaign to distribute the polyherbal formulations Ayush 64 and a Siddha drug Kabasura Kudire, which is repurposed for COVID-19 treatment for mild to moderate conditions. And I would like to also mention that during second wave, at the fag end of the second wave, we were able to distribute more than 150,000 patients who were under home isolation, and we were able to record 66,000 people's 3 weeks follow-up, and we found that out of these, nobody died. Only 300 people had to go to hospital, and all of them survived. Now we are working on creating. So this is a kind of a huge cohort, and then this cohort showed that Ayush interventions had delivered a lot. I would like to at the end I would like to mention that why I mentioned this digital health of Ayush, COVID, and other aspects of Ayush, because I just wanted to mention that looking at the possibility of this synthesis of modern science in the field of Ayurveda has now having a lot of potential because of these great different evidences, and then we can definitely look at this possibility and explore more. I'm sure that these innovations and technologies will help us march toward a healthier world and will help us achieve universal health coverage to maximum extent through sustainable development of the science. I wish all the success to Tech for Seva Global Summit. I'm sure the interaction, communications will pave the way for tangible activities with fruitful outcome. I'm confident that my optimism on this score will be shared by all the delegates. Namaste, pranams to all.
Thank you so much, sir, for such inspiring and enlightening words. Thank you so much. Now we have between us our worthy guest of honor, Shri Jayant Sahasra Buddhiji, National Organizing Secretary, Vigyan Bharati. He worked extensively on the social welfare of the society, active member of many national think tanks. He dedicated his life for working rigorously towards promoting Swadeshi Vigyan in India. The motto of Swadeshi Vigyan movement is to promote Make in India, which will help in making the country prosperous and independent. He has over 30 years of working experience in field of science and Swadeshi Vigyan movement. We are obliged to have you here, sir, and it would be a great opportunity to invite you to please address the session. Thank you so much, sir.
नमस्कार, वैद्य राजेश जी कोटेचा इस सत्र में उपस्थित सारे आयुर्वेद और आधुनिक विज्ञान के विशेषज्ञ और इस सत्र में जुड़े हुए सारे प्रतिभागी। हम सब जानते हैं इस कार्यक्रम का जो शीर्षक है वो टेक फॉर सेवा। इसमें साइंस शब्द नहीं है, लेकिन आयोजकों के मन में वो शब्द है, हाउ वी विल बी एबल टू यूटिलाइज साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी फॉर द सर्विस ऑफ आवर कॉमन पीपल। विज्ञान का उपयोग अपने देश के सामान्य लोगों की सेवा करने के लिए कैसे हो सकता है, ये इसका मुख्य कार्यक्रम का आधार बिंदु है। विज्ञान के अंदर अपार क्षमता है सामान्य लोगों के लिए सेवा देने की, और वर्तमान में अपने देश में और पूरे विश्व में स्वास्थ्य संबंधी चिंताएं बढ़ी हुई है। और हम सब ये भी जानते हैं कि अपने देश में और पूरे विश्व में भी स्वास्थ्य सेवाएं लगातार उनकी कीमतें बढ़ती जा रही है। सामान्य व्यक्ति की पहुंच से बाहर ऐसी ये स्वास्थ्य की सेवा अब हो चुकी है। लेकिन अपने देश में एक विशेषता यह है कि सदियों पुरानी अपने देश में विकसित आयुर्वेद की पद्धति ये बहुत ही सरल, सहज, सामान्य और लोगों को सहज प्राप्त होने वाली इस प्रकार की ये आयुर्वेद की चिकित्सा पद्धति है। और ऐसा विश्वास हमें है कि आधुनिक विज्ञान और आयुर्वेद का अगर समन्वय हो जाएगा तो हम ये चिकित्सा सामान्य लोगों के लिए बहुत अच्छी प्रकार से उपलब्ध कराएंगे। जैसे राजेश जी ने यहाँ पर कुछ उदाहरण दिए CSIR में, जैसे आयुर्जिनोमिक्स इस नाम से कुछ काम हुआ है, उसी प्रकार से आदरणीय डॉक्टर वलियेथन जी ने आयुर्वेदिक बायोलॉजी इस नाम से एक काम डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी के द्वारा लगभग 2007 में शुरू किया। और अपने देश में उसके बाद आधुनिक विज्ञान के विशेषज्ञ और आयुर्वेद के विशेषज्ञ इनका आपस में समन्वय शुरू हो गया और कई प्रकार की अच्छी बातें इन दोनों को समन्वय से आगे आना प्रारंभ हुआ है। आज के इस सत्र में अपने देश में काम करने वाले और विदेश में भी काम करने वाले ऐसे कुछ विशेषज्ञ जुड़े हैं जिन्होंने इस प्रकार का एक सफल प्रयास किया है। तो मुझे विश्वास है कि इन सारे विशेषज्ञों के द्वारा हम सभी मिलकर ये समझ पाएंगे कि आयुर्वेद और आधुनिक विज्ञान का समन्वय होगा तो किस प्रकार से बहुत ही सहज रीति से चिकित्सा सामान्य व्यक्ति तक पहुंच सकती है। और इस सत्र का यही एक विशेष उद्देश्य है। अफोर्डेबिलिटी के साथ साथ हमने सस्टेनेबिलिटी का भी विचार किया है। और हम सब जानते हैं कि विश्व में वर्तमान में जलवायु परिवर्तन की बहुत बड़ी समस्या है। हम सभी मिलकर उस समस्या का सामना कर रहे हैं और उसमें एक विशेष सूत्र आधुनिक जगत में सामने आया है, थिंक ग्लोबल एक्ट लोकल, माइक्रोकॉस्म इक्वल्स मैक्रोकॉस्म, यानी स्थूल जगत और सूक्ष्म जगत का समन्वय होना चाहिए। और यही बात आयुर्वेद के द्वारा सतत कही गई है, जिसका आदरणीय राजेश जी ने उल्लेख किया, यत् पिंडे तत् ब्रह्मांडे। तो मुझे लगता है कि इस सस्टेनेबिलिटी की ये जो बात अब आई है और जीवन के हर क्षेत्र में धारणाक्षम विकास की कल्पना हम सब मिलकर कर रहे हैं, उसमें आयुर्वेद की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रहने वाली है। और इस दृष्टि से ये सत्र हम सभी के लिए बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण है और आप जैसे विशेषज्ञों के द्वारा इन बातों पर बहुत ही अच्छा प्रकाश डाला जाएगा और हम सभी के लिए, पूरे देश के लिए एक पाथेय मिलेगा कि हम सब आयुर्वेद और आधुनिक विज्ञान को एक साथ जोड़कर कैसे आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। आप सभी को इस सत्र में जुड़ने के लिए मैं साधुवाद देता हूं, आप सभी का स्वागत करता हूं। नमस्ते।
थैंक यू सो मच सर। बहुत ही इंस्पिरेशनल एड्रेस था आपका। इट वाज रियली वेरी वेरी नाइस। थैंक यू सो मच। I now take this opportunity to introduce our eminent presiding guest, Dr. Yogendra Malik, member, Ethics and Medical Registration Board, National Medical Commission. He has MD and FMT from Guwahati Medical College and Hospital, Guwahati. He has a certificate course in analytical toxicology from AIIMS, Cochin, Kerala. He also has a certificate course in forensic DNA analysis from AIIMS, Cochin, Kerala. He is the member institute body of AIIMS, Bhatinda. His research areas includes ethics, toxicology, and clinical forensic medicine. He has over 20 national and international publications in his way. We welcome you, sir, and we would like to hear from you at the end of the session. Thank you so much. Now, time to move on for our panel discussion. So over to you, Dr. Shalini. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shefali. I'm very thankful to Vijayan Bharati, Unnat Bharat Abhiyan and Center of Innovation and Biodesign for giving me this privilege to host and moderate this panel on the synthesis of modern science in the field of Ayurveda. The best tool for development is to upkeep the link between man and the nature. I am privileged to welcome my panelist today, Dr. Rama Jayasundar, Professor and Head Department of NMR, AIIMS, Delhi. She is PhD in NMR from Cambridge University, UK. Her areas of specialization is biomedical NMR, radio frequency, coil designing and building, RF pulse sequence programming, clinical imaging and spectroscopy, neuroscience application of MR. She has a wide experience in both experimental and clinical MRI and spectroscopy. She has developed indigenously a low-cost RF transmitter receiver coil for clinical use, for which she received the Young Scientist Award. She is actively engaged in dissemination of knowledge of the science behind Ayurveda. So she is a physicist and an Ayurvedic physician. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. My second panelist is Dr. Geeta Krishnan, who is working with WHO Geneva with the objective to integrate the traditional medicine into modern medicine. We are privileged to have you, sir, on our panel. He is an Ayurvedic physician with postgraduate degree in clinical pharmacology of Ayurveda. He is the head and senior consultant for integrative medicine at Medanta. He engages himself in botanical drug research and has passionately followed up various drug development programs since 1999 and is working with Innoveda as its founder, Indian Institute of Integrative Medicine. He is in a position as a member of the board advising the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh on utilizing Ayurveda effectively in public health management. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Our third panelist is Dr. Ajaita Channa. She is Director, A Clinic, co-founder, I Read In. She is successful and she is working as a fast-paced Ayurveda professional who founded her clinic in 1998. Her expertise and care in Ayurveda is highly sought after by patients in India, Canada, Switzerland, Germany, and UAE. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Ajaita. So, this session has been addressed by such honorable people like Dr. Shri Vaidya, Shri Jayanji, that I am falling short of words. It is common to hear that Ayurveda lacks scientific evidence. By scientific evidence, it is commonly referred to results of clinical trial, randomized clinical studies. And when we talk of Ayurveda, people address it as a traditional medicine, and it does not become a component of modern medicine. It is estimated that we have in our country about 7 lakh BAMS graduates who are practicing mixed kind of medicine. The modern medicine has gone far in criticism for Ayurveda and its advent and its inadvertent adverse effects, rather than appreciating the benefits of Unani medicine, which is more relevant in our social setup, where most of our patients believe more in Ayurveda than modern medicine. There are other issues about Ayurvedic medicines like the purity, formulation, contamination, marketing. So Ayurveda is based on psycho-physical, social health. It is an indigenous medical system, and we know of many medical. Ask my first panelist, Dr. Ajaita. I would like to ask you is, how do you justify Ayurveda in modern medicine?
Thank you, Dr. Shalini, for this wonderful question. And before I start my opinion, I would just like to say thank you to CBioT for inviting me as a panelist, and all the revered panelists. Very good evening to you. Our chief guest, Dr. Rajesh Kotecha. Thank you so much. Ma'am, you have asked a very relevant question, how Ayurveda is justified in the modern medicine or in the modern time. I would just like to quote the first principle of Ayurveda, which is called as the Samdosha, Samdhatu, Samagni, Malkriya, Prasanna Atma Indriyamana, Swast Itya Abhidhyate. So I think modern medicine is very well connected with the physical aspect of the human being or maybe the patient, but modern medicine is somehow not able to fix up the right connection of the medicine or of the physician with the patient itself. So hence we may get a very beautiful relationship, the results in curing the acute patients suffering maybe from any kind of the acute illness, but we are unable to control the mental aspect or the mental health of the patient. So if I say if we have to give a concrete or the very precise line of treatment to the patient, we must not forget the mental health aspect, which has been very well written in our sutra, which is called as the Prasanna Atma Indriya Mana. So I think there is a huge gap between the physical treating a patient on the physical formation and the patient treating with on the mental formation. So I
Go on. I would like to ask
one single line of treatment under one roof, hence so that he doesn't have to go here and there.
how does Ayurveda differ from allopathic medicine? What are the fundamental differences between the two?
So, namaskar everybody. So, before I respond to this question, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. Hope I am audible.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. So, thank you for asking this question, the fundamental differences between Ayurveda and allopathy. Because I think understanding the fundamental differences and also accepting the fact that there are fundamental differences between the two systems is very important when we are talking of integrating the two systems. So, to put in a nutshell, we can say that allopathy is talks about structural reductionism. So, when I say structural reductionism, it means that it understands the human system, as being made up of structural entities like atoms, molecules, cells, organelles, and so on. On the other hand, Ayurveda, I wouldn't say that it does not talk about structural elements. It does talk of dhatus, which are which talks about tissues and structures, but it goes beyond structures and it talks about functional holism. Another difference between the two is how they manage the complex human system. So allopathy simplifies the complexity of the human system by reductionism. So it reduces the entire human system to the level of molecules, and then it tries to understand the disease at the level of molecule. Treatment is also given at the level of molecule. Whereas on the other hand, Ayurveda manages complexity by systems approach. Now, systems approach is coming up in a very big way in modern medicine. It's something that's being talked about extensively, and this is exactly how Ayurveda handles the human system. So it does not look only at the physical domain. It takes into account the physical, physiological, psychological, emotional, and even the spiritual domain. So it is it looks at the human system in a very systems manner, and it handles it in an integrative manner. Another difference I can think of is the focus of allopathy is basically disease. It is a science of disease. And of course, in recent times, the importance of health, wellness, and preventive health, all these are concepts which are being talked about only recently. On the other hand, Ayurveda deals with both health and disease. And I think another fundamental difference would be how preventive and promotive health is very highly developed in Ayurveda, whereas these are still concepts at a very nascent stage in allopathy. Then if you look at the treatment, allopathy follows a targeted mechanical intervention, and Ayurveda has a very comprehensive approach and the way it understands the human system is also the way it manages the human system. So its comprehensive therapeutic strategy would encompass all the dimensions, physical, physiological, and psychological domains. So these are some of the fundamental differences, I think, or between the two systems of medicine. And I think I personally very strongly believe that cognizance of these differences are very, very important when we are trying to integrate two systems. And because at the end of it, the whole purpose of integrating, bringing together two systems is for the patient's benefit. So when we do that, we should make sure that, no system, the nuances of the system should not be lost.
Second, Madam, I would like to ask Dr. Geeta that, sir, what is the scope of research and how, is there a global interest in Ayurveda, or is it just confined to our country or our continent? Sir, would you add on this?
Thank you for inviting me to this wonderful session, and to Jain ji as well as to Rajesh ji for having made sure that I have been invited to this. So coming back to your question, Dr. Shalini, Ayurveda is a science, and science basically, in my perspective, has no limitation. So the scope of research in Ayurveda is unlimited. So there is the broadest answer which I can give to you. But if you ask me more specifically, what should be the immediate aspects of Ayurveda research, one of which I would definitely say, from the perspectives which I have gained over the past 20 years, being somehow or directly or deeply involved with research in Ayurveda, is that the Ayurvedic research now need to move away from what is research to where it is going to be used and why is the research, because Ayurvedic research has been considerably available in voluminous or in amounts in different parts of the world, especially in India, Sri Lanka, etc. But how much of it is being utilized by the community and being translated into actual use, which is what the Tech for Seva really stands for. You develop something, you utilize that. That is not seen. You can. I could give you umpteen number of examples, but just imagine when for 20 years or so we have been knowing that a specific kind of medication utilized for managing or reducing the Helicobacter pylori load in severe conditions by simple Ayurvedic mechanisms, which could be administered in an OPD, is not being utilized in the middle India and in a northeastern part of India, where this is a major problem, which can cause serious disorders or serious diseases like gastric erosions and probably later cancer. Why aren't we using it? Why is that? That is a major question which I feel as somebody who had been looking at Ayurvedic research. So it is not where and when or what, it is basically why we should do the research. That's very important. And that is a major question which is brought out by the idea of Tech for Seva. And I think that will be noted by the policymakers, and necessary translatory mechanisms will be put in place for Ayurvedic research. Your next question, if there is a lot of interest in Ayurvedic research across the globe, of course there is. We could, I'm personally associated with or fortunate to be helping out the Ministry of Ayush to create collaborations across different parts of the globe. I'm actually very, very happy to say that, the ministry has been very proactively working towards doing clinical trials. Especially during the COVID time, we have recently signed an MOU with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine to do a large-scale study of post-COVID syndrome of around 2,500 patients in London. And then we also are in discussions, or when I say the councils of the ministry are in discussions with National Cancer Institute for exploring possibilities of cancer management, or starting from possibilities of using resources of Ayush systems for appropriate use in cancer management across the globe. It is not only for India, it's a basic global requirement that is coming up. We know that inclusion of Ayurvedic research-based activities in management of integrated care of elephantiasis or filariasis has been very effectively utilized even in certain parts of Africa. So if you ask me, the scope and the interest are increasing and exponentially so, and the uptake of these things uptake is also going up quite high, and it is very important. It's happening, and the kind of support which is seen for this kind of a translation is unprecedented in the case of Ayurveda. I should say you should not think about whether there has been a result in a 5-year effort which has been taken up by a science in the past. Like I would say, a 5-year effort to really integrate Ayurveda into the global system, into the Indian health system, to a 70-year or 100-year integration possibility which has happened for the modern medicine. So we have a huge difference in terms of time and also in terms of resources, but those are filling up, those are catching up, and I think hopefully we should be able to see a lot more of Ayurvedic tech in Seva for the people of India. Thank you.
My question to Dr. Rama is that can the Ayurvedic drugs be used for randomized controlled trial against a placebo or against any allopathic medicine? Would it be ethically justified? Like, I'm just quoting my own experience, like I am working on PCOS women. So I was like having a drug company come to me to start using fenugreek extract. So, I mean, there was problem with getting the ethical clearance. My own institute, I could not get the support to do that. So, like these kind of issues, how do we take the Ayurvedic drugs a step further? For this, I would take inputs from Dr. Malik also. And we can't hear you.
Ramaji, unmute kariye.
Yeah. So before I go back, before I respond to this question, I would like to go back to the previous question where you were asking about the scope of research. See, the scope of research depends on what the objectives are, right? So that when you talk of research in Ayurveda, there can be several objectives. So for example, one objective can be to prove the therapeutic efficacy of Ayurveda. So if you talk about therapeutic efficacy of Ayurveda, you need to do clinical trials, randomized clinical trials. You will have to prove it in the language and with the methods that are currently in use. And or the objective can be, using information on medicinal plants from Ayurveda for drug development. So the part of the question that you asked actually partially falls into the first objective and the second objective. And or it can simply be how to use Ayurveda as it is, as it stands, for managing health and disease. So what you do and how you do depends upon what the objectives are. So when you talk of whether how to do the randomized clinical trials against placebo, was that the question? Right. See, I think first is we need to understand that Ayurvedic treatment, that drugs, medicines play only a small role. So Ayurvedic treatment is a complete package. It includes, internal medicines, external applications. There are procedures like panchakarmas. There are diet and lifestyle changes cannot be removed from Ayurvedic treatment. They are part and parcel of Ayurvedic package. So when you say drugs, then it's only one small aspect of the Ayurvedic treatment that you are looking at. And if we use, let's say, classical formulations, then classical formulations do not require clinical trials. Whereas, proprietary items and, as you said, extracts, these are all not part of classical formulations, formulations in Ayurveda. Those will have to undergo the routine process of that the modern drug development undergoes. So there will be problems when we are talking. I mean, I work in AIIMS New Delhi, and I know I can very well empathize with you. When you say your institute ethical committee doesn't clear, it happens in all the in most of the allopathic institutions, and rightly so. So the first thing they will ask is, where is the evidence for its efficiency before we give ethical clearance for its use in our patient population. So for example, if you are talking about, let's say, an extract A, then the company which actually supplies you the extract A should have done the clinical trial for it. And they should actually provide the evidence and the details of these clinical trials and the clinical data, and using which it will be easier for us to get the ethical clearance. But having said this, I would again go back to the initial point I was trying to make, that it will be great injustice to Ayurveda if you look at only the drugs, the medicine aspect of it. It's an entire package, and it has to be evaluated as a whole, so that it's not only for benefit of Ayurveda, but for the benefit of the patients. Because this is one of the fundamental difference between Ayurvedic treatment and the allopathic treatment. The entire allopathic treatment is focused on drug, right? So there are only a few diseases where you talk about diet and lifestyle changes. Example like maybe diabetes. But in Ayurveda, every disease will have a prescription of dietary changes and lifestyle modification. So we should somehow, think of looking at Ayurvedic treatment as a whole. So we can use a black box approach, or observational studies where we are looking at the initial points and the end points. But I agree with you that getting ethical clearance from institutes is very, very difficult, and I appeal to Vaidya Rajesh Kotecha ji that the ministry should do something to enable study of Ayurvedic treatment or medicines in institutes other than the Ayush institutes, and I think it's very important.
Dr. Ajay, I want to ask you one thing, that recently I had the experience of my international friends who came to India to a center which was an Ayurvedic center set up by the Mittal company. So that's somewhere in Bangalore, and she spent a good hell amount of money for the Ayurvedic treatment for whatever illnesses she had. So do you see a global market or a globally driven, travelers coming to India for this? So what do you have to comment on that?
So personally speaking, I see a lot of influx of international people traveling to India, especially for getting themselves treated as per the lines of Ayurveda. I do see, because when they fly from overseas to not only to me, I'm sure India has become a hub of alternative medicine, and Ayurveda is the name which is really on the tongue of every citizen around the globe. Personally speaking, I had done a press conference in 5-6 years ago when I was treating 5 people from the different nations. So one was from Australia and one was from Germany. Two were from Germany. One was from Australia, one was from Iran, and one was from Persian country. Honestly speaking, that is the one part what I really wanted to highlight here, and with the permission of Dr. Rajesh Kotecha, I would really insist that like our Panchkarma is taken as still a placebo by many of the people, whereas we know this is not the placebo. And people who come to India for Ayurveda, the number has been really increased. Earlier, they were just going to South India, but now North India is being hit drastically to get this Ayurveda treatment. But yes, but still I see there is a one weakness in Ayurveda where we are not able to establish the the documentation of Panchakarma treatments, which people they seek. We need to have more documentation to let people know. And especially when the challenge is coming for the mental health, people are really shifting from this is a paradigm, when the people, they are coming from allopathy to Ayurveda to seek treatment for the depression. I in my clinic have been treating many patients for depression, and post-COVID, I see like 1 in the 5 person is suffering with the post-COVID depression. And now where I see that Ayurveda should take a lead to take care of this challenge, which is a huge challenge, because physically we can see people, they are getting fine, but mentally they are not happy. And the suicide rate and the depression rate, they are really increasing. So we have to make a team with the allopathy, or maybe with only the Panchakarma treatment wing, or maybe with the Ayurvedist, where we can really help the mankind, and India can become the real hub of the Ayurveda, or I'm saying the real hub of the treatment center, where people they would keep flocking to India.
Kind of tourism which has a lot of scope in India. So when we are going organic food, chemical free clothing, and now it is chemical free treatment also. Thank you, Dr. Ajita, for this. Dr. Geeta, if you could throw light on the role of WHO to integrate traditional medicine into national health system. Since you are working on that, can you please illuminate that?
WHO is working at a very broad scale in the inclusion of traditional medicine into health systems across the globe. So we have a strategy which is from 2014 to 2023, which recognizes that there is not enough evidence available as publications, etc. And traditional medicines are systems of practices which are in existence since millennia in different cultures and societies. So it needs to be accepted as such and integrated into the system at the best possible manner. The most important thing that we are focusing on is safety and efficacy. Mostly on safety and quality is what we are looking at. So what we do is we create benchmarks for these. For example, one of the things that we do is we create benchmarks for training of Ayurveda. So we have benchmarks for training of Ayurveda, which has been established since 2010. And what had happened is in the past 10 years, we have found that there is a lot of change in the spectrum of Ayurveda and the regions where Ayurveda is being practiced and being accepted by different societies. So we are updating it right now. We are also creating a benchmark for practice of Ayurveda. Benchmark of practice of Ayurveda doesn't mean it's a clinical guideline for Ayurvedic practice. It is a benchmark for how organizations or regulatory agencies can absorb Ayurveda into their health system. So that is a very broad but very strong intervention from WHO side, which will allow countries of member states of WHO to accept traditional medical systems like Ayurveda. That's what we are doing. We are also, one of the main things that we find is the language difference between the current worldview, or which includes the modern worldview and modern science-based understanding of the society and the traditional systems of medicine. So we are creating we are trying to overcome the language barrier through creating standardized terminologies for these systems. So we are at the process of creating standardized terminologies for Ayurveda, Unani, and Siddha right now. We are also working on including Ayurveda into the basic elements of health system, which includes data collection. So as all of you know, the basic elements of health system in data collection means in international classification of diseases, and we are working right now to include Ayurvedic terminologies of morbidity and mortality into the ICD coding system, and which should happen in the next 2 or 3 years. We are doing this in close support and collaboration with the government of India, as well as with several member states. So you would be happy to know that the benchmark documents, we have worked with 49 countries simultaneously, members from 49 countries. In the case of terminology documents. We have been working with 32 countries. So when we are talking about the terminology of Ayurveda, we are not talking about terminology being explained by an Ayurvedic physician. We are talking about terminology being explained by an Ayurvedic physician, a practitioner, a modern medical practitioner who understands Ayurveda, a health system analyst or a health system regulator who wants to utilize that for understanding Ayurveda, academic professors, historians, language experts, etc. So we are bringing all these things together and helping the traditional medicine to get really integrated into different systems of the world. And especially so, we are working very closely with Ayurvedic experts and the government of India in this particular matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Geeta. This is going to be worthwhile in taking Ayurveda further. I would like to ask Dr. Rama, for the drug development studies in Ayurveda, what checklist or precautions are taken to avoid controversies and mishaps during marketing? Recently, there have been so much controversy regarding the COVID, post-COVID, the Ayurvedic drugs and all that. So I would like you to say something on that.
See, when we talk of Ayurvedic medicines, there are two different aspects to it. One is the classical formulations, the other are proprietary medicines. And medicines which are used, which are mentioned in the classical text, but which are not used for the conditions indicated in the text. So if you look at the guidelines for clinical evaluation of Ayurveda, Siddha and Unani medicines, these are covered in the Indian Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940. And I think there was a gazette notification was published in 2008, I think, which said, which was talking about the sense of India. And it said that the classical Ayurvedic formulations, when used for indications mentioned in the classical text, these are exempt from clinical trials to prove the efficacy. So in other words, these are rules pertaining to classical formulations with prior human use, and these do not have to follow clinical trial rules laid down for proprietary medicines or traditional knowledge-based drug discovery. So all the other medicines, which falls outside the purview of these, will have to follow the same procedures, and checklist and precautions which are followed by modern drug discovery. So when you talk of, you mentioned about the medicines, Ayurvedic medicines, which were propagated or which were being used by the Ayurvedic fraternity during the COVID time. So I think we should realize that virus is nothing new to humans. Virus, they are as old as humans are, and the human population have faced a number of viral diseases. And considering the fact that Ayurveda is it's more than 5,000 years old, that's a conservative estimate of how old the system is. It must have, we can only imagine how many kind of epidemics and viral diseases and fevers that Ayurveda would have gone through, would have seen, and so it is a system of medicine which has also fine-tuned. We kept fine-tuning its approach with its experience. So the medicines which the Ayurvedic fraternity were suggesting to be used, they were all many of them were medicines which have been used for fever, various kinds of fever. And so as per the Drugs and Cosmetic Act, these, if they are traditional medicines and they are used for the purpose for which it is indicated in the text, then the clinical trials are not required at all. But any other medicines, it has to go through the same precautionary measures and checklists that the modern drug discovery uses.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Geeta, can you tell me that what is the scope of, do you think it is Ayurvedic medicine has more of a preventive role or it has more scope as a treatment agent?
I couldn't get your question very clearly. Can you come up again?
Is it more, I mean, in the prevention of disease, the Ayurveda has a greater role, or is it that Ayurveda is more successful in as a treating drug?
So I cannot say precisely that Ayurveda should only be considered towards the prevention of the disease, whereas it has equally the beneficial role in controlling or in the treatment of the disease. Yes, I do agree that in Ayurveda, the acute phase of some certain kind of the ailments, like some cardiac arrest is there, some shock treatment, some syncope is there, or maybe some kind of a stroke is there. I do agree that allopathy comes in the front line, which is the forte of the allopathy. But at the same time, whereas that certain diseases like this, we can take into cognizance, like, ankylosing spondylosis is there, rheumatoid arthritis is there, diabetes is there, the hyperlipidemia is there, certain kind of the skin disorders are there. There are the certain kind, these diseases, they can be certainly very well taken care of with the Ayurvedic medicine. And these Ayurvedic medicines, and of course with the precaution of, see, whenever we are talking with any kind of the Ayurvedic line of treatment, it naturally comes with the two components, that diet and the lifestyle of the patient has to be put under a check. If these three pillars, they are working together in one kind of the triangle, in the form of the triangle, I'm sure, like, and we all have seen in the clinical aspect, the results are wonderful. So Ayurveda, whatever it is, just being coming up, like, it is just a preventive medicine, and it is not for the treatment of the certain kind of the disorders. I do not agree to this. But to add on, yes, in the emergency stage, we definitely need to switch over to the allopathy, because no system of medicine is complete. We have to take the support of the other system. That's why it is called as the complementing one system to the other system. Neither allopathy is a complete line of treatment, nor Ayurveda is the complete line of treatment. But yes, if these two systems, they are working parallelly with the both feet together, I'm sure the race is going to be quite healthy and very wealthy for the patient as well. This is what my personal opinion is.
Dr. Geeta, you want to add something? And I also want to ask you that when we talk of the allopathic medicine, we have the phase 1 trial, phase 2 trial, whereas these medicines are integrated into our system for so many years. So what do you have to say about this? I just read recently that we have the pharmacopoeias or so much literature on the past. So you think that these phase trials are not needed for Ayurvedic drugs?
Yeah, it again comes back to what Dr. Rama said in the beginning. Why are we doing this? Like, what for this research is being done? So if it is a new drug which is not there in the market and is being brought out into the market, you might have to very specifically do all these trials. It is very essential. It has to be clearly understood that not all herbs doesn't mean that they are safe. So from the safety's point of view also, it needs to be looked into whether it is useful, whether a combination of herbs can be useful, whether it can be safe, etc., etc. So this is very essential. So that goes without saying that these kind of trials are required if you are going to include a new drug into the market. But if you are going to ask whether like eating rice and wheat every day in the afternoon is good enough, and you have to do a clinical trial for that, it is very similar to that. If you look at the kind of medicines which our community had been having, think about just 10% of our population using Ayurveda for the past like 1,000 years. Like, it will take another 100 years for a clinical trial to achieve that kind of a number. Like on an everyday scale, you do 100,000 patients. So these are absurd questions of asking a culture to look at their own culture and come out with proof to say that okay, your culture is okay and safe, and for our own use. So if you are going to use it for our own purpose, you don't require to do any of these clinical trials. If you want to take it out to a different culture, a different society, you want to include Ayurveda in UK and expect that United Kingdom's people should accept Ayurveda as such because India is using it, because first of all, they don't understand it. They will not do it. So they will have to go ahead and, and do it. But that is in our interest. We want to do business there. We want to do commerce there. We go and do it. If it is so effective, tomorrow if Ayurveda comes out with a drug for managing, let us say, breast cancer in first stage of breast cancer, and is used for every single woman who is having breast cancer possibility in India effectively, you don't have to worry about UK. You are going and selling this drug to UK, United Kingdom, and the entire world will come to India and take it away. They don't want any clinical trial or anything. So the effectiveness of how we utilize the knowledge that we have in our society will lead to whether we need to do a clinical trial in other countries. But basically, if you want to just take a drug out and try to sell it in some other country, you would definitely have to go through the clinical trial processes, because these are not regulated in those countries. Otherwise, you will have to go to those regulated countries, like for example, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, Malaysia, or several other countries. You can directly sell your Ayurvedic drugs there. So you don't require to go for that. You can even go to several African countries which will allow you to sell your drugs there. So it is necessary to do clinical trials if it is a new drug. It is necessary to do the clinical trials of traditional drugs also in new markets. So this is how we should look at it. It is not necessary to do clinical trials of Ayurvedic drugs in Ayurveda and those areas where Ayurveda is accepted and been in use for many centuries. Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, I just recently came across the Germans making plates out of banana leaves. So we had been using that for ages, and now they think that they have done the best thing. So it is probably they do not understand what we do. So we do not need to explain what we are doing. If Shri Vedyaji is there, I would like him to say a few words on the panel. Yes, sir.
Actually, I was listening and learning, from this all vibrant experience sharing by the panelists. And there are a few questions, like Ramaji has mentioned, that can we do something for the ethical committee issues, or Dr. Ajayita was mentioning about this, Panchakarma and is considered placebo, or Gita Krishnanji was mentioning about that it is like that, do we need clinical trials to prove that rice and wheat can be a staple for our daily meals? And so all these, I think all these observations and opinions were very put in a very right perspective. Actually, and it was presented into an apt kind of sense and apt placement of the thought process for the subject concerned. So to begin with Ramaji's request, actually there are a lot of other examples also, including AIIMS, that ethical committee, after continuous persuasion, they also give consent for a lot of such innovative clinical research, particularly programs on Ayurvedic medicine, projects for Ayurvedic medicine. So the very idea of ethical committee is that there are diverse representation, and then there is a tremendous thought process involved, and the experts are there. Sometimes these clinical the ethical committees in different institutions are also having the bias factor, that cannot be because it is an individual centric kind of thing. So that even if you create a separate ecosystem, you have to face it. So it is better that we educate, we disseminate more and more knowledge about Ayurveda, its evidences, the researches has been done, and then those kind of dissemination of information is probably the key to resolve this issue, in place of creating a separate ecosystem. Because when we talk about health research, is health research. Health research is not Ayurveda or allopathy. If we do drug research, is a drug research. So the drug candidate could be different, but research is research. So I think the more possible way is to disseminate, to have more and more communications. Like recently, we have started dialogue with Ministry of Health. The ministers of both the ministries, cabinet ministers and state ministers, They have started sitting together every month and discussing how to work together, how to create an ecosystem of integrative healthcare. So that kind of thing, those kind of things may deliver of resolving such issues. For the information of Dr. Ajay Itaji, actually I would like to mention that we are having a lot of such mechanics study of Panchakarma. The problem is that these people who these scientists, who is in practice, they have not developed an aptitude to look at the work, kind of work is being done by this side of the this end of the streams, health streams. Like for example, on Ayush Research Portal, we have put more than 33,000 publications in indexing of 33,000 peer-reviewed publications on Ayush Research Portal, and all those categorized with category A level of research, category B level of research, or anecdotal research, and also categorized into the clinical research, basic science research, or preclinical and mechanic studies, etc. So it's very huge database, and it shows that there is a lot of work already done. Like we are now doing mechanics for Virechana. In one of the Panchakarma procedures is Virechana. So mechanics of Virechana is being studied at ILBS, or mechanics of Basti Chikitsa is being studied at some other institute. So all things are going on. The only problem is that we need more dialogue, more communication. For example, in COVID now, because of these efforts, I was mentioning about the numbers, 126 studies, 27 studies. Now we have around 30 publications on board in good journals. 48 scripts are under review process, and 25 preprint available. So it's a huge number. But when we talk with the scientists at the other end, they always without looking at those statistics, they just tell us, they advise us कि आपको evidence generate करना चाहिए, आप लोग documentation करो, evidence generate करना चाहिए. So that kind of this gap area is that lack of communication, I think. So we need to improve more on this communication side, and that is the key. And working together, having respect with each other. There is another, the problem sometimes what we face is that you go to any, because I'm participating lot of such events in different locations. In any event, if somebody is from outside, a political leader or a local leader or a thought leader or a scientist, they categorically, by default, they advise the Ayush people that आपको research करना नहीं आता, आपको research करना चाहिए, आपको documentation करना चाहिए. And the other thing, what they always by default say is that your practitioners, आपको अपना practice नहीं करते, आप allopathic practice करते हैं, आपको वो नहीं करना चाहिए. But they don't look at the brighter side, that the new generation people, the new generation practitioners are so confident, they are delivering, they are entrepreneurs. There are so many good examples that we lack, we don't look at that. So it is like our honorable Prime Minister in one of the Mann Ki Baat said last year, that he said that our Indian sciences, it suffers with this problem. What Indian science suffers with the problem is that by our 1,000 years of slavery, we have developed this aptitude that whatever is coming from the outside, we accept it as it is. And from our within, if some scientific things happens, we question, and then we doubt. So it's a lack of confidence, self-confidence, So he has actually, in his Mann Ki Baat, he mentioned, and he has challenged our youth to work more and more towards Ayurveda and Yoga, and to create more and more evidences, so that this ecosystem can be developed. So that is what I want to convey, and I'm thankful to Dr. Yogendra ji also for his comment. Actually, it was very nice, and I have enjoyed this discussion. And on the top, the blessings from Honorable Jayant ji is also, we all received, and we all appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I thank all the panelists and our chief guest for making this session a worthwhile session. With this, I hand back to Dr. Shefali.
Thank you. So I would like to invite our presiding guest, Dr. Yogendra Malik ji, to please enlighten us with his motivational words. Dr. Yogendra Malik ji.
नमस्ते विज्ञान भारती और सेंटर फॉर इनोवेशन एंड बायो डिजाइन PGIMR चंडीगढ़ द्वारा आयोजित इस टेक फॉर सेवा में के कार्यक्रम में जो हेल्थ केयर को इंक्लूसिव, अफोर्डेबल और सस्टेनेबल बनाने के लिए हम प्रयास कर रहे हैं और आरंभ से मैं इस जो प्रयास इससे जुड़ा हूँ, उसमें मुझे आप सब लोगों से इंटरेक्शन करने के लिए मौका देने के लिए आई रियली थैंक Shashru Budde ji and Dr. Virendra Garg, and thanks for getting me to understand things from a related field. I'll say I never say whenever I am among the Ayurveda practitioners, Vaidyas, I never say I am the odd man out, because our aim is same. There should be Praninam Artinashanam. There should be no disease. There should be a patient and societal focus in the vision of all of us. Having said that, integration now is not the issue which should be which is discussed in the Indian a scenario now, because Health Policy 2017 talks about the integration. So it's a policy matter. We have to integrate. The only matter is how we integrate. And without practicing cross-pathies, we have to integrate. Basically, we in modern science, we have grown because of growth of modern science, like from X-rays to modern different latest scans. Science helped us to grow. Digitalization helped us to ease many processes. Growth in pharmaceuticals is due to advancement in science. And in anesthesia to surgery, you talk about nanotechnology and robotic surgeries. Everything is science, and modern medicine is using that science to grow up and advance. Yesterday we crossed 100 crore marks of in a massive vaccination drive. So this vaccination we never imagined will come out. I mean, nobody imagined that we'll come out with a vaccine in such a short period of time. It's all because of science that we are able to kind of give impetus to fight against this pandemic of COVID through vaccination. It's all the modern medicine has developed through this development of science. Like we mentioned cancer also, its treatment, how to detect it, and its advancement in such scenarios and fight against AIDS and such like of diseases. All the treatment part and the prevention part and the promotive part, it's all because of the advancement we had in the modern science. I'm not an expert of Ayurveda, and I will definitely not fall into the trap of this Ayurveda versus allopathy. I've never been, because allopathy people most of the time they don't know Ayurveda, and Ayurveda people most of the times they don't know about allopathy, but still they pose questions, and rather than excelling in their own fields and focusing on patient care, I don't want to get that rival feeling, because ultimately the patient care is supreme. So I'm not the expert in the Ayurveda field, but I would definitely, from this panel, what I have gathered, that it is for the Ayurveda experts who have to decide about how they can integrate this modern science into their discipline without interfering into the principles of, or rather to say how this modern science is conducive to the principles of Ayurveda. They have to see, and then they have to kind of apply modern science into growth of Ayurveda. They can do it. Say like in last 4, 5, even more 7, 8 decades, life expectancy has increased tremendously because of the growth in science, and because of this growth in science, and new diseases are coming off, lifestyle diseases are becoming more because of the geriatric population and all. So obviously some of you mentioned some very important and pertinent points, like you have some issues. I have when I was listening to your views, I was getting some feedback for our working also in National Medical Commission, and rightly Dr. Kotecha, I'm very fortunate to hear him in this panel discussion in the initial part, he rightly mentioned that what we need is the team kind of effort and more communication amongst various stakeholders, so that we can really understand what the problems are and how to basically go for this integration. Just to add for this integration thing, because this is not a part of this the topic per se, but I met both Dr. Kotecha and I don't know whether Dr. Rama Sundaram, when I was working in an organization, I met her for 2 hours in AIIMS, and my views changed when she said Ayurveda is a perfect science. So, and today also she said that for this classical formulation and all, we don't require trials. That's what she told me that day also. It's a 10,000 years old science, and the practitioners of Ayurveda should have faith in this process of development of Ayurveda through ages and practice accordingly. So that day I realized that rather than the kind of integration we have in our mind through words and putting everything in words, we can have like one of you said, all the pathies and the systems of medicine under one roof, and the patients to decide, and even they can cross refer and kind of thing. So that things we can plan those things, because as I said in initial part, health policy mentions that we have to integrate. How we have to integrate, we have to discuss. And then I think the takeaway from today's session is 2 quotes made by Dr. Jayasundaram. I perfectly agree with them that use Ayurveda as it is, as he said it. And secondly, she said that it will be a great injustice to Ayurveda if we evaluate on the methods of modern science. And like Dr. Geeta also was saying, that this language and methods of modern day and modern science, they are kind of doesn't match with what is there in Ayurveda, if I have rightly understood. So I think from this panel discussion, and specifically from the guidance of Vaidya Kotechaji, Secretary Ayush, we are perfectly clear that our direction is towards more communication, more integration. How we have to do it? We have to, sit down again. Communication. We have to sit down and discuss with each other, and how patient benefit. WHO definition of health is, I think, is comprehensive, and it's more evolving also. We can add many things to it. It talks about well-being, not only physical, mental, and physical and social well-being also, and not merely disease, absence of disease and infirmity. So I think we all share the common goal of Praninam Artinashanam, that we have to kind of relieve the human beings of their sufferings, and bring what I could understand from Dr. Kotecha. 2 things he said. I have to read Hitayu and Sukhayu. They were the things. I think it's perfectly all right. It gives us the basically the principle we should follow in any pathy. As a doctor, as a Vaidya, or any traditional system we are practicing, these 2 things should kind of guide us. So that's what I think I got from today's discussion. Thank you so much, all the panelists. You have really given very good insights to me, and thank you, Kotecha sir, for your guiding words, and Srubudde ji for his guiding this thing, and Dr. Virendra for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Sir, I was your student in 2001, and after 2001, I'm seeing you and talking to you. I mean, it's a pleasure for me. It's an honor for me, and that all I can say. I've been trying to say my words of thanks to you since a long time, but never got an opportunity. And thanks to this CBIOD platform, that I could again speak to you. I was your student in Jaipur. So that whatever I am doing for Ayurveda today, it is just the preaching of yours, sir, Dr. Rajesh. I owe my all knowledge to you, because this is what I am today. It's only because of you today.
Thank you so much. So now I take this opportunity to introduce our awardee, Dr. Deepika Jain, International Health and Wellness Expert. She's an international health and wellness expert and offers more than 15 years of earned success as committed healthcare professional. An award-winning celebrity doctor who has also worked in Ministry of Health, Dubai, as Senior Specialist in Licensing and Advertisement Department. She's a former Senior Examining Officer to recruit doctors across the globe in Ministry of Health, UAE. She's the founder and Managing Director of international event company Mega Cosmos, which works for highlighting global issues through work of art and fashion. She has also been conferred Mrs. Delhi Global 2019 and Mrs. India International 2019. We heartily welcome you, Dr. Deepika Jain. I would like to request Sri Vaidya Rajesh ji, if you can confer the Arogya Sebayat Innovation and Enterprise Leadership Award to Dr. Deepika Jain. Sri Rajesh ji, if you can confer the award to Dr. Deepika Jain.
I don't know how virtually I confer the award, but I by saying that I confer this award to Dr. Deepika Jain. Thank you so much for giving honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. On behalf of, now I would like Dr. Deepika Jain to please say a few words.
Yeah, very good evening to everyone, and it was pleasure hearing all the experts from Ayurveda. I myself is not an Ayurvedic expert, but yes, health and wellness expert, and my specialties are different, but it was a real intellectual and a pleasure to hear all of you and learn so much from this session. So as the session was about the sustainable and affordable healthcare, so my just one word for this, that if we look at the health in a holistic manner, it would be a great thing. And when I say as just one health, then I mean that we need to work collaboratively for the optimal health of people all across, and to give each and everyone good health as a basic thing rather than a luxury or a luxurious amenity, as we talking about the sustainable as well as affordable healthcare. So telemedicine and telepathy, this technology, we should include more of it into our healthcare system, whether it is Ayurvedic, homeopathic, Ayush, or we need to work with Ministry of Health and all. And we need to all come together, work under the same roof and work for the betterment of health of each and every individual across the globe. All pathies are best in their own domain, and together if we come at the same table, we can serve patients with the we can cure their disease rather than we can suppress or suspend their systems momentarily. So I think it was great to hear all the experts from Ayurveda, and I have learned a bit from this Ayurvedic insights. My family is a big fan of Ayurvedic treatment, so it was a pleasure attending this session. Thank you for the honor. I'm grateful to Dr. Virendra for making the part of this session. Thank you so very much. And thank you, Rajesh, Dr. Rajesh, for conferring this award to me. Thank you so much.
I'm really sorry for the technical hitch on our side. So on behalf of Vibha, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Vibha, Unnat Bharat Abhiyan and Sebayat, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our worthy chief guest, Sri Vaidya Rajesh ji, our eminent guest of honor, Sri Jayant Sahasrabuddhe ji, our eminent presiding guest, Dr. Yogendra Malik ji, our worthy panelists, Dr. Ramaja Sundar, Dr. Geeta Krishnan, Dr. Ajayata, our awardee, Dr. Deepika, for gracing this session with their esteemed presence and highlighting the importance of Ayurveda in our lives. I would also like to thank our audience for attending the session. Thank you so much for making this session such an informative and enlightened. Kindly join us for our next session tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you so much. Namaste. Namaskar.